to our webinar on customer community migrations made simple. So this is a strategic roadmap for CX, product, community, and support leaders. And your hosts, Social Edge, and Higher Logic, of course. So, your host today, we are so beyond thrilled to have Nicole Saunders. She's Senior Director of CX Strategy from Higher Logic. Nicole, welcome.
Thanks so much. Glad to be here.
And then we also have our Vice President of Technology from Social Edge Consulting, John Reynolds.
Nice to meet everyone.
John has handled plenty of migration, so we're very
hmm
excited to have him. And then our Associate Director of Strategy, Sarah Collins.
Hi, nice to meet you all.
And Sarah works day in and day out with our customers and is just a wealth of knowledge. So we are very excited to have her join as well. All right, and I'll pass it on to you.
Yeah, thank you, Allison. I'm going to start with the agenda slide. So just a brief overview of what we're going to be covering today. We're going to dive into the why and when of migrations, trying to help you identify those key signals that your current platform, could be holding you back, or maybe it's time to make a move. We'll spend some time on planning. This is really where most successful migrations are won or lost. Then we'll walk through our proven step-by-step roadmap. John will discuss and walk us through that our enterprise teams use to get it right, as we say, the first time. We'll share some real-world lessons and pitfalls to avoid. And then, as Allison alluded to already, at the end, there will be time for live Q&A where you could ask any specific questions that you'd like between myself, John, and Nicole. So I wanted to start off with a question. So I'd love to hear from you in the chat. If you feel comfortable doing so, please feel free. What's one word or phrase maybe that comes to your mind when you think about a platform migration? And I'll just give you a couple of seconds to think about it and pop those answers in the chat. Okay, stress. I see an emoji, the scared emoji, right? Daunting. Yep. Time. Another like upvote on daunting. Um, all great responses. We've heard these types of responses before. But the truth is they're all valid, right? You're valid in feeling that way. Platform migrations can feel daunting, but really with the right approach, which is again what we hope to walk you through today, they can really be great opportunities to re-energize your community, um, unlock new capabilities maybe that you've been dreaming about. And again, that's exactly why we're here today. We're really here to help guide you through this process, show you how to turn what might feel overwhelming or daunting or scary into a strategic advantage for your organization. Sorry, this slide is not clicking. There we go. Okay, so let's start with the fundamental question, right? When and why would you migrate? It's not a decision to take lightly, and timing really is everything. So we listed out some key questions that we often, find ourselves asking and working with clients on anytime we're doing a migration. How long have you been on your current platform? Maybe there's something that's driving you to consider a change. If so, what is it? Maybe you've been on the same platform for 3 to 5 years or more. You could potentially be outgrowing its capabilities. Maybe you're missing out on some newer features that could significantly improve your user experience. Second, what specific features or capabilities would make a migration worth the investment, right? Are you looking for better mobile responsiveness? Maybe it's advanced analytics. It could be improved search functionality, better integration capabilities. There's really a wide variety of things that could fall within that area. But having those clear, specific goals and what you're looking for is really crucial in this process. Another big thing too is the content audit. So have you started thinking about your content audit? It might seem premature, but understanding the scope and true complexity of your existing content is both essential for your timeline as well as that budget planning, right? So as you're getting ready to plan for the migration, it's really a key part. And then, Maybe is your current platform provider ending support or discontinuing your version? Sometimes the decision might be made for you, unfortunately, when vendors, announce end of life dates or, stop providing security updates, right? In these cases, migration almost becomes a necessity rather than a choice. And again, the planning ahead just gives you more control over that timeline and process that you now are going through. So take a moment to consider these questions and really think about what your answers might be. Keep those in your mind, and it might help guide you through kind of the story and everything we're going to talk about today. And I am going to pass it over to Nicole, who's going to talk through planning ahead.
Great. Thanks so much, Sarah. Hi, everybody. It's so great to be with you today. For a little context, I've recently joined Higher Logic, and I'm really excited to be in this space and getting to advise so many community professionals. But prior to this, I spent about 8 years leading community at Zendesk, and then I spent a year leading community and customer marketing over at Coupa Software. And so I've kind of been in all of the roles. I've been that solo community manager, I've been the head of a community team, I've been the executive that community rolls up to. And in every one of those roles, I've had to go through this process of making the case for a new community platform, planning for migration, everything. So wherever you are in your journey, wherever you are in your organization, I can relate to what you're going through a little bit. And I'm here and eager to answer questions and help people out. So we can go ahead to that next slide. All right, so where do you need to start, right? And some of this is applicable both to that process of determining, do I need to have a new platform? How do I plan for all of this? And then how do I get into the migration? So the first thing that you need to be really clear on are these two pieces of what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish by shifting platforms? And what do you want that user experience to be? Sarah just outlined some great reasons why somebody might migrate. And so it may be that you are trying to pivot your community. Maybe it's been a really focused on technical support and you want it to become more of a community of practice. Maybe you're wanting to add ideation to it. Whatever that experience looks like, you want to be really clear on what's going to be different and what needs to be similar. You want to have a little bit of continuity in order to maintain some consistency for those members that are going to follow you from one platform to the other. But you need to know what you're changing and why. The other key is knowing how you'll measure success. One of the biggest things that comes up when you're trying to make a platform shift is often your executives say, well, what value are we going to get by doing this? How is this going to increase the bottom line further? So you definitely want to be able to say, we're creating a better customer experience. Here's the ways it's going to improve, and here's how we're going to measure that. Today, we see this many people coming through. Our goal is that by 18 months after a shift, we're seeing this many people joining the community or this kind of activity, or if you can get it, these dollar bill items that we can report on, and whether that's support deflections or features delivered, anything like that. So step number one, get really clear on why are you making this shift? What are the impacts you're going for, and how are you going to measure it? And then that next step is you can start thinking through what's going to be required to achieve that. So if we go to the next slide, we can start talking through what that looks like. So first, obviously the technical integration is a big part of this. My pro tip is the second you start thinking about a platform shift, start talking to your IT team and getting on their roadmap. The single biggest blocker that I have seen in organizations to shifting platforms, it's usually not the budget, it's usually not making the case for it, it's that internal IT teams don't have bandwidth on their roadmap to do the implementation. Now, there's a couple different ways that you can solve for that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but maybe your vendor can help you out. Maybe there's a third party or a consultant that can help you out. But there's always going to be a little bit of work for your internal team to do integrations and things like that. So make sure you get on that roadmap very early and let people know that this is coming well ahead of it so that you have that resource available. Sarah mentioned doing a content audit. You are going to want to think a lot about what you will move and what you won't. Some of the things that I've looked at in the past when I've done this is applying that 80-20 rule. Probably 20% of your content gets the vast majority of your page views. So look at your analytics, figure out what people are looking at on a regular basis that probably should move with you, and what doesn't need to. What's maybe not relevant, what's maybe old information, what's maybe just clogging up your search results that you don't need. If you're changing the focus of your community and what its purpose is, the kind of content that you need might be shifting. If you've primarily been technical support and you really want to move into the space of ideas, you may or may not need all that information. Maybe a lot of it gets turned into knowledge base articles, so it's still available and your community conversation can focus on something else. And then thinking about your design. Is it going to be significantly different? Is your company shifting branding? Does your community not reflect your company's current branding and you need to update that? And the reason that you want to think about all these things is they're each going to require resources, right? You're going to need technical resources to do the migration. You're going to need help with the content and reviewing all of that. And you're probably going to need some design resources as well if you're going to be changing anything significantly or doing any custom work. All right, and then we can go to the next slide. And then change management. This is actually the most important one. I think it is intuitive to a lot of people to think about the technical requirements and the content and all those pieces we just talked about. But you also really need to think about how are you going to communicate and market this both internally and externally. A good place to start is identifying your key stakeholders internally. It's probably more than your boss, right? It's probably the senior executive you roll up to, maybe other departments. We all know that communities touch many parts of the business. Who are the leaders in the other parts of the business that are going to need to be on board for this? And how can you make sure to communicate this change in terms of how it's going to positively impact their goals? Then who else needs to be informed? There may be people, maybe your support reps point customers to the community for support. They probably need to know that this is changing so they can tell customers that it's going to be a different experience. And then who needs to be enabled? Are there other people across the business that are going to need to use and interact with the community directly that are going to need training on a new platform and what a new experience is? Of course, you also need to plan for how you're going to communicate this to your customers or your community members or your users. Um, Tell them early, let them know that this is coming, give them time to prepare. Change is always hard for people, even when it's a positive thing. You want to give them some notice. And if you can, I always recommend engaging those community members in the planning for this shift. If they are part of creating the new space, one, you'll make sure that you're building something that is in alignment with what they most need and want. And two, they'll be more eager to adopt it and promote it because it's something that they've contributed to. So see if you can put together a little advisory board of customers to be part of helping to communicate this and helping to make some of these decisions. And then, of course, that final step is really outlining who's going to be responsible for all these pieces. Maybe this is doing a RACI or something like that to put together which things are going to be managed by internal teams, which things are going to be managed by your platform vendor services teams, and which things you might be outsourcing to contractors or third parties. So there's a lot of pieces in there, but you can always go back and watch the recording and start to get the outline of the different things. And now I'm going to hand it off to John to dig into some of these topics a little bit deeper.
Yep, thanks. Hi everyone, and I felt comfortable dropping my blue screen, so sharing my office just like everybody else. So it's good to see you all, and I'd like to talk about. Um, I'll give you a bird's eye view into what a successful migration project looks like. This shows how a migration project plays out, and first, I want to say that this project is happening while your community is still live, right? You're live on your current community. And to Victor's point in the chat about time being the word, right? You have the time spent still managing your current community. I hope you're delegating that down to moderators and other community managers. But then you've got this project to launch your new community. So the top section, community build, includes the tasks that are required just to set up the skeleton of your future home for the community and where you're going to migrate your content to. Obviously, this takes configuration, setup, and planning. The bottom section, community migration, are all the activities related to the technical migration of data between the current system and the new system. So as you can see, between the two projects, there are parallels, and the define and recommend sections align so that the new community is set up in a way that the migration team can migrate the content to the right places, right? With different community platforms, they're basically the same concepts, right? People, users, groups or spaces, forums, discussions, all these terms are generally the same. but they may behave differently between the two platforms, and it's great to align at this point in time. So then focusing on the implementation of the migration in the bottom section, we first stage your content in the new platform so that you can see how your content looks in context. This will help with the daunting part, right? You're so comfortable in how your content looks now. What's it going to look like in the new platform? I don't know. So we stage it there so that you can be comfortable with how it'll look and behave before we go through migrating, hundreds, thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of content items. So early in that blue section at the bottom, we perform a full migration as early as possible. It includes all the users, migrating content, making sure all the authors of the content are the original authors, and we update all the links. So again, back to the scream emoji, you don't have to worry about broken links because we have a process to make sure that all the links to the old URLs are updated to the new URLs of the new platform. And then at launch, we'll perform a Delta migration of all the content in the live community that was added since we performed the initial one, right? Delta just indicating the change. And what this does is this allows us, when you do the actual switch from the old platform to the new platform, this usually happens in hours as opposed to days. So, we've optimized this process. And then by the end of this few month project, you are live on the new platform. You go to the next slide. Okay, so again, so knowing this project gets executed, what does success look like? First of all, as far as community management, the community has been built, it's been configured, and you've been set it up to scale. You've got some great new features that you want to get your hands on, right? But your key goal was to launch the community and migrate, and now you're phased to scale. And then also that your managers, admins, and moderators are trained on the new platform for day one. So again, going back to time and management, your delegation of this to other team members and other stakeholders is incredibly important, and you could roll right into day one management on the new platform. And then technical wise, again, our team's done, dozens of these migrations, and you want to make sure that all the data in the old platform gets migrated successfully, and we have ways to check that and get migrated with minimal downtime. Broken links are resolved. Any attached video or attachments, images, video, and other media that were uploaded by users in the old platform, those all carry over into the new, and authorship is resolved. So now you're live on your new platform, and you're set to resume all your engagement and enhancement goals. You go to the next. Okay, keep going. Okay. So just to take a few lessons learned, I'm going to start with the first two. One is, while you're doing the project, make sure you simulate all the production functionality that you have currently that a user would experience. It's not only what you click through on the browser, but it's things like the notifications users get, the emails that they get set, right? Think of it as when you work in an environment that's not your production, right? You do not want customers getting emails from a staging environment. Same thing here. You do not want them getting emails while you're building this community, but you still have to test it. So please work that into your plan. It can be done without disrupting a user experience. And to add on to Nicole's 80-20 rule with content, I'm gonna say the 95-5 rule with making it look nice, right? You may take the opportunity to redesign the community during this migration. If you haven't redesigned the community in a while, it's okay to do that. The modern tools to redesign a community now should allow you the time to do that. But say for some reason you did a redesign a year ago, and now you don't want to disturb the UI as much, so you want to keep it looking as much as possible. Really focus on the high level design, right? Make sure the majority of the site is good, because the 95-5 rule, that last 5% of making it look just perfect does take a lot of time. Work on the priority stuff first. Sarah?
Yeah, and then finally, expectations versus reality. They often diverge. We see it constantly, time and time again. Teams have a vision of what maybe the new platform will do or what they're expecting it to do, but maybe they haven't fully validated that vision yet against the actual capabilities or, compared to users' needs. So it's just really important to set realistic goals. You want to validate continuously and really stay flexible. That's the big takeaway from that point there. Um, we even like to say that the best migrations adapt based on what you learned during the process, right? So it's really about being adaptable and flexible, which still allows you to meet your users' needs, right? We're not saying that won't happen. It's just that you need to remember to stay flexible throughout the process and it'll lead to greater success. And that brings us to the point in the presentation where if you want to ask any questions, we'll open it up. Like we said, there's myself, John, and Nicole here to address whatever challenges or concerns you might be facing with your migration planning, whether you're just starting to think about migrating or maybe you're in the process already. We're here to help. So we'll open it up to the floor. Come off of mute, or you could pop it in the chat if you'd like.
I can start off. Nicole, when we talk about stakeholder alignment, what is one of the first steps there? Like if I'm looking to get my stakeholders on board, what would you do first? And then I see Sarah has a question.
Yeah, this is probably one of the most important aspects, right? And it's one of the biggest challenges for most teams because most of the time, it's not your CMO coming in and saying, I think we need a new platform. It's the community management team saying, hey, I'm not getting what I need, or gosh, I can do what I need to do with this platform, but it's really cumbersome and I want one that automates this process, something like that. And so you do have to go around and make that case to your executives. Where I have always started is making sure I have a clear understanding of what are their primary goals and objectives, and then communicating to them, this is how changing our platform will help you. For example, if you need to get the head of product on board, talk about ideation, and you could say something like, hey, today, this is what the ideation experience looks like, and your product managers are telling me this is really hard. If I can move to this new platform, we can integrate with your system, or we think that we can better communicate these roadmap things, and that's going to increase customer engagement, or there's a new group functionality, and we can use that for our beta program. Um, but you need to understand their goals and talk about it in their terms. I think one of the challenges for a lot of community professionals is we know so much about community and we want to talk about things in our terms and what we think is really valuable and important. But oftentimes that's not the same language that our executives speak. And so you need to put things in their language so that they can really connect the dots between this investment and how it's actually going to impact the business and the aspects of the business that they really care about.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and Allison, I could take Sarah's question. Sarah asked if you had one key thing to share about customer-facing change management, what would that be? To add on to Nicole's statement about language, um, try what's your language to your customers, right? Do you as a company have a voice either through announcements or news and updates on your homepage, or is there a moderator voice right deep within subject matter topics within your community? Wherever your voice is, that would be a great place to communicate about an upcoming change, right? It may be you just let, there's users interact with users and you reserve just very minimal, announcement space or system maintenance space. That's all fine. But I would say, communicate as early as you can in a voice that would be promoting the fact that this is a really good but big change coming up. And just let them know that it's going to mean an improved community going forward.
I totally second that, John. And you just like communicating with your executives, right? Here's the benefit for you. You also have to do that for your customers. Here's how this change is going to benefit you. Here's how it's going to improve your experience. And here's what to expect. Because that's the biggest thing, especially for those users that have been using it a lot. if you're going to change something that's really familiar to them, they want to know what they're getting into here, what it's going to look like the day that you switch over.
Okay, so Parvez has an SSO concerns when I think about migration. What should we keep in mind while doing SSO migrations? I guess multiple team involvement is required. Yes. So as I mentioned when I showed the project plan, you're doing this migration project in parallel to your site being live. So what you can do is you can apply single sign-on to that site while it's a work in progress. And just the only team members that would be able to access it would be like the platform vendor, the partner, and you as the community managers or the community migration team would access it and test it. We actually establish SSO as early as we can on the new platform and use it throughout the project. So essentially, we get to test it for 4 months straight, so that by the time we cut over, you're just flipping over. You're just really flipping a switch. I mean, I'm using the technical glossing over term, but you really just are flipping a switch over to the new community.
Yep, that's a great point, John. Um,
So, Allison, I think we can wrap up.
Perfect. Yes. Are there any final questions? Please hop in now. And of course, feel free to LinkedIn, email any of our three hosts. And we just popped in a migration webinar poll up there, so feel free to answer on your way out. But it was a pleasure to have all of you, and we look forward to hosting you again.